Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Sean Flynn, and this is my ethical leadership presentation. So, my career and leadership style, as of right now, I'm currently an assistant coach and offensive coordinator at a junior college in Southern California. And my goal is to become the head coach either at the school I'm at now or a different school within the next 5 years. And then to use that as a stepping stone to become an athletic director within the next 10 years at a junior college or university somewhere. The responsibilities of a head coach would be to oversee the entire program, from the players to the coaches and staff. You're responsible for the image of the program, and anything they do is an image of the program. So making sure that every athlete is a student first and an athlete second, and then putting out a respectable winning product week to week. If you don't win, you don't keep your job. So as great as those other things are, you still have to win and put a good product out on the field. My leadership style, I would say, is transformational. A transformational leader tries to change or transform his or her followers while responding to the needs of the followers and having the goals of the group aligned. And then when it comes to sports, Callow, Smith, Hardy, Arthur, and Hardy, 2009, they explain transformational leadership within sports as a social support, focusing on the welfare of one's athletes, and then they define intrinsic motivation as an individual's choosing to engage in an activity for the pleasure it brings and explores the power that transformational leadership can have as these leaders seek to empower their athletes rather than control them. So rather than control your athletes or followers, a transformational leadership role would be to empower your athletes, to empower the people that follow you, and make them achieve their goals that way. Transformational leaders are extremely concerned with the growth and development of their followers, and because of this, they set very challenging expectations for them. And just based on my life experience, this type of leadership is the best way. It worked best for me when I was a follower, and it so far in my career has worked best as far as me stepping into a leadership role and leading young men. So the leadership strategies that I would implement when I become the head coach is student first, athlete second. I mentioned this earlier, and this is a big one. Football will end for everyone someday, but the education that they can achieve through football can take any athlete or person much further in life. I tell all my guys, all my athletes, to use football to get your education paid for. Football is one of the rare sports that if you do get a scholarship, it's always a full scholarship. There are no half scholarships. There's no partial scholarships. If you get a scholarship in football, they're going to pay for your entire education. And that's big. So I tell them to use football to get the education paid for. I would like to improve the team GPA and then express the importance of grades, because again, football does not last forever. What I would do to do this is grade check implementation. So last year, at the end of the season, we got our team GPA back, and it was a very low 1.7 was the team average. Now, there were some guys that had some really good grades, but the vast majority did not do well in the classroom, and I think that there wasn't an importance put on the classroom. But one thing I did with my quarterbacks, that's the position group that I'm in charge of, was every 2 weeks we had a grade check, and the grade check is due every 2 weeks. If they didn't turn it in, there were consequences such as running. They would be suspended from practice or a game. Luckily I never had to suspend anyone, but these grade checks let me know where they're at in class. And for the quarterbacks, our overall GPA, I was only 5 guys, but we had an overall GPA average of 3.6, so much better than the 1.7. What we also did was every Thursday we had a weekly discussion, and this was after our football meeting. We would talk about the assignments that were due for the next week in each of their classes, how they were going to organize their time, and do they need help in any of their classes. So this worked very well for me last year. The vision I have of this strategy would be to get the entire program's team GPA up well above 2.5. So from 1.7, that would be a big jump, but I think that could happen in the near future by implementing this program. Vision, as described by Huff, Floyd, Sherman, and Turgeson, is the explanation that strategic vision is a compelling image that is used as an educated exercise for future aspirations into the near future. And I think that in the near future, this GPA could be raised quite quickly just by making them realize the importance of grades. The next thing is athlete second. So student first, athlete second is state titles. The last 3 years, our team has gone 10-2, which is very good, but we're stagnant. 10-2, 3 straight years. You have to change something, or else you're going to get the same result over and over. So within the next 3 years, I'd like to go undefeated and win a state title. I think that the key to this would be organization and knowledge. The current problem is not all the coaches are on the same page as far as strategic game planning. SWOT analysis. So I think this is a great concept of taking an analysis of yourself. Check your strengths, your weaknesses, the opportunities that are out there, and then the threats that are out there. And by looking at that, that's when I saw that we were all on different pages as far as strategic planning. The coaches, I think, should have at least a weekly meeting regarding the game plan and or strategy for that week. And if a coach doesn't understand the game plan, I think that he should sit in on the meetings with his players to learn as if he was going to play the game. And if he didn't get it then he can meet with other coaches and get the help that he needs. But there are some big benefits to fully understanding the game plan. Better coaching would be one, because if the coach doesn't know what's going on, he's really at a disadvantage in coaching his guys because he doesn't know what they're supposed to do. He wouldn't know right from wrong at that point. I think that the coaches would have a more invested interest because now they're a part of it. There are larger and smaller roles on the staff, and the smaller role guys sometimes get pushed to the side, but the invested interest that would come from understanding the game plan could lead to more energy, things of that nature, and then better attention to detail. Football doesn't get the credit it deserves for being a very detail-oriented sport, and when everyone is on the same page, you can pay better attention to those details. With any strategy, sustainability is big. Once the strategy is employed, it must be sustained. This is one final very important component of strategic focus, and that's Porter, 1998. And then Borland, Burton, and Kane said that once a competitive advantage is gained, the group must position itself to maintain that advantage. Ethical issues. So the first ethical issue I'm going to go into is discrimination. This is very big in college athletic departments and, really all over the world. But for regards to this presentation, I'm going to go with the athletic department. And there are two types of discrimination. So there's treatment discrimination, which is described as a subgroup that receives a less significant amount of rewards, resources, or opportunities while doing a job they're completely deserving of. And then there's access discrimination, which is when a minority is prevented from a certain job by having things such as applications rejected or limited advertising of those positions that are available. And that leads me to some research I did. In 2016, for Division I college football, out of 128 Division I teams, only 11 of those head coaches were African American, and that's only 8%, so a very small amount, which shows that there's clearly discrimination still in college athletics. And then in another study by Harrison, Lapchick, and Jansen, it was found that intercollegiate coaching was 88 to 97% of all the power positions. University presidents, athletic directors, head coaches, associate athletic directors, faculty athletic representatives, and sports information directors were all held by whites in NCAA. So again, any position of power is held by whites right now, and that needs to change. So the solutions, I would adopt a version of the Rooney Rule in athletic departments all over the country. And the Rooney Rule is what the NFL implemented in that whenever they're hiring for a new power position, it is required that they interview at least one minority. And I would like to see that change to multiple, but it's a good start. I think that doing blind interviews, not being able to see the person you're interviewing and just going based off of credentials, how they sound, what they're doing, I think that will all help. And then I think that more diverse hiring committees, so having a more well-balanced hiring committee would also help. The next one is the Due Process Clause in the Fifth Amendment. The U.S. Constitution says no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, and property without due process, and this is an ethical issue that a lot of schools are seeing. For example, Price versus the University of Alabama in 2004. In order for the DPC to apply to the government, must attempt to deny a person of life, liberty, or property interests. So Price was the head coach at the University of Alabama. He was at a charity event, and he got engaged in some misconduct. He was under the influence and really made a fool of the school. The problem is they fired him without hearing his side of it, so he took him to court, saying that he was denied his life, liberty, or property interest, which is what he claimed he was denied of. The best way to avoid any of these situations is to fully understand all laws and allegations, and to just really know the law inside and out so that you don't put yourself at risk for these ethical issues. The next ethical issue that I'm going to go into is negligence, and this is a big one right now with injuries, head trauma, CTE within football. There was an article written by Ben Strauss in the New York Times. Several college football players are filing class action lawsuits against their universities for negligence in effectively and safely handling their players' head injuries. This is big. I would rather be safe than sorry later, so I would hold my guys out as long as possible until I know that they're healthy. And then in 2011, there was a negligence with a player who had sickle cell trait, and he passed away because of the negligence. And if the school would have just paid closer attention to detail and taken care of what they were supposed to, they could have avoided his death. So integrating faith into this leadership presentation, I tried to find some Bible verses that really describe leadership. And the first one I found was Galatians chapter 6, verse 9. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. So as long as we don't give up and we're doing well in the world, we will reap a harvest in the end. And I think that this is huge in anything, because it's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows when you're being a leader. There's going to be some dark times, and there's going to be some hard times where you want to give up. But if you don't give up and you keep pushing and you stay true to your faith, then at the end of it, eventually it'll come around and you'll reap a harvest. Which leads me to Hebrew chapter 13, verse 7. Remember your leaders who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. In a leadership role, your athletes, students, whoever you're leading, they look up to you. And as long as you live a good life and they see that, then in turn, they should want to live a good life. And usually they will live a good life because they're going to follow someone that they look up to, which is you as the leader. So I think that's a big one. And then last, John chapter 13, verse 15. I have set you an example so that you should do as I have done for you. And this is a big one because I think that leadership is fading in all aspects of our country. I think that there's not enough leaders. Everyone wants to be told what to do and no one wants to take initiative. But I think that if there are good leaders that come forward and can just pave the way for someone, and then they start to pave the way for the next person down the road and the next person, then it becomes this avalanche of good leadership and everything will be looking up. You know, it starts as a snowball, one person, the next person, next thing you know, you have an avalanche. So I think these verses are great for a leadership role and something that, you know, I speak with my players about and just try to get them to understand how important being a leader is and speaking for yourself and not just falling in lines with everyone else. Being bold enough to stand up and be a leader and do things as you see fit. So, thank you very much for watching my presentation, and good night.